Welcome to Ragdale's online showcase of student work created during the 2020 High School Arts Intensive. My name is Regina Gloria, Director of Education at Ragdale. I'm pleased to introduce tonight's program, a showcase of the works done by high school students enrolled in our July workshops, two creative writing classes led by Margaret Hawkins and Quresh Ali Lansana, a visual arts course led by Paulina Camacho Valencia, and puppetry taught by KT Shivak. Ragdale has offered the high school arts intensive for the past 13 years, and even though this year's pandemic has altered how the workshops took place, the students have shown their versatility and resilience, signing up for yet another online learning opportunity during their precious summer days. They took this in full stride for 3 weeks, meeting twice a week for 2 hours with students from other schools, writing and creating on their own, in some cases gathering materials found back together online to share their work. I wish you all could have been to some of these Zoom sessions to witness the conversations, the struggles, and how to convey so many emotions, the problem solving, and sometimes relying on humor to deal with the heaviness we're dealing with at the moment. Listen closely, they truly have a pulse on this world. This collection says more about what's to come than what has happened, and ultimately we know these students will have a lot more to offer. We're so glad you joined us to celebrate their creative achievements. Thank you for being here. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Margaret Hawkins. I'm a writer and a teacher, and I've been teaching at Ragdale for over 12 years. I also teach writing at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and at Loyola University and other places, The Clearing. What I do is to give generative assignments, and so they create a lot of work in class that they continue working on as homework. And then they can take it into the world after the class is over. So we started with nonfiction, and then we went to fiction, and then we concluded with poetry. So we did lists of obsessions, of people in their life, of teachers, of those were some of the nonfiction prompts. But then when we got to fiction, we began to create characters and imagine what the characters desired and what the impediments to those desires were. They all wrote flash fiction, and they seem to really gravitate toward that. One of the characteristics of flash fiction is that you start in the center of the action. So a prompt that seemed to inspire some really good work was the second time it happened. So that's the beginning of the first sentence of a very short story. And there were some exciting things that came from that. When we got to poetry, we were already talking about the themes of the time, isolation, boredom, social justice. So they wrote poems about, everything from what made them angry to a poem about a number. There were some moments of personal revelation that I kind of don't want to talk about in specifics because they were so personal. And all I can say is I always feel really honored to be trusted with these kinds of, the kind of revelations that people share about themselves that are a result of their writing. And it's completely, I'm getting actually kind of like goosebumps in my very hot room here. A chill comes over me thinking about it. And it happens, this isn't the first time it's happened. And like I say, I feel very honored. And I also know as a writer, it's been doing this a long time, that's a sign that you're hitting on something, something that's sensitive, something that's painful, something that you should write about, and there's something to say about it.
Hello, my name is Clara. I'm a sophomore at Woodlands Academy, and this is my second summer attending Ragdale. So the first piece I wrote, our prompt was to write it so that it would take place over 50 years, and this is what I came up with. I first came across her when she was young, perhaps 16 or so. She would let her long chestnut hair down and run through amber fields, rejoicing in the blessing of the sun. I remember thinking it a pity we had to meet, this girl and I. Yet I watched over her steadfast, dare I even say grew fond. She continued running through the waves of wheat, and in time 2 events occurred. In the first of which, I realized she was slipping out of lessons in posture and needlepoint and the proper behavior for proper young ladies. In the second of which, a young man began chasing after her, laughing as he followed her to their favorite spot, hidden from all eyes, except of course mine. This spot, where they escaped too often, was on a grassy overlook, speckled with flowers under an ancient willow tree. In fact, I am quite familiar with this tree, but that is another story for another time. Here the young man would tuck picked wildflowers behind her ear, or the now young woman would lay on her back and tell him the stories of the stars. And one night, when neither of them had filled their teacher's shoes with frogs, or been so wholly but simply appeased by a shiny red balloon in years, the young woman identified the emotions that had been building in her heart for quite a while. But she did not tell him, for she feared them. If I were permitted to intervene in one life in which I kept vigil, I would choose this girl's. I had been called to her at just a time that I might observe her undergo a period of irreversible change, and consequently, I admit I grew attached. But this remaining only a dream, one of the few I have ever painfully allowed myself to harbor, I could not fill her with any courage to confess her love to a man she would soon grow to hate. For the boy, now a man, after giving her his time and sharing that with her, wanted more. And when she kept her feelings to herself by fear and uncertainty, he looked for distraction elsewhere. But, the fiend, he kept it from her. I anguished as she returned to their tree one afternoon, a Dickens book in hand, only to stumble upon him stumbling with another woman. No, another girl, barely a woman. They were tipsy with drink, and their clothes were rumpled and muddied as they shouldn't be. She gasped, tears filling her heart, and ran. But the boy, a boy again, tripped chasing after her. Her heart fraying and a shadow on her soul, I comforted her the best I could. But I regret the limitations of my power did not extend far enough to the living. Her once beautiful chestnut hair dulled, and her smile grew wan. She was married off to a gentleman who was fine, the event imagination of the mothers of society. She was not well, I could see, but her husband provided for them both, and I approve of his entirely good intentions for her happiness. Fortunately, at this point in time, I was called to other duties at the start of the war, and as such, fate's hand kept me and their 2 children from meeting. I did not mind, for it pains me even more when I meet children. I am called many things, the worst of which a thief. The now old woman's son and daughter, all grown, her husband having joined me the year prior, I was called to their doorstep on the eve of the day she and her first love met. Perhaps a coincidence, but fate and I are two good friends. I recognize its horrid, ugly face now. Sorrow emptied in my heart when I met her again. She was a girl in death, her long chestnut hair gleaming and let down. There was no need for me to introduce myself. We both know who I was. But she told me her name, and I said I knew. I said I knew everything, but let's go now. I've got you, and it's okay now, but it's time to go. She looked in my eyes, and it was the first time anyone had been fearless in the face of death. Rosy cheeks stained with tears, she told me she had already said her goodbyes. She had known we would meet soon. I told her I knew, nodded and took her hand, began leading her toward beyond. But she tugged back a moment and asked in a soft voice if she could say goodbye to him, that she was unable to in life. I smiled and patted her hand and told her there was no need, for on the other side, her love had been waiting to tell her something for a very long time.
Peace. This is Quraysh Ali Lansana. You all know me as Q. And it's been an honor and a privilege to work with these young people for this year's High School Arts Week. This is, I believe, my 11th year teaching in the program. This session, we worked with epistolary writing or epistolary poems. We wrote did humor writing. We engaged in a talking back exercise where students selected their favorite piece of writing or a piece of writing from another author and talked back to that author. And we did a lot of reading this session as well. Primarily of short fiction, as ways to engage in a deeper level of storytelling and narrative writing for poetry. They also engaged in writing about the Ragdale Ring, which is a very special and unique art happening this year with the robot painting on the lawn. And so they did engage in some writing specific to the Ragdale Ring as well, and their interpretations of that art and the movement associated with the robot. Congratulations to all of the young people who participated in High School Arts Week.
Hello, my name is Fernando Contreras, and this is my first year at Ragdale's High School Arts Intensive program. And today, I just want to share with you all 3 poems that I've written throughout the 3 weeks of the workshop, and I hope you guys have enjoyed. My first piece is the Ragdale Ring piece. This robot is just like me. It can move and think freely, but sometimes I think that it thinks too much like me. It follows what I do. When I dance in circles, it follows too. When I dance in circles just like the moon. This thing is just like my shadow. Has deeper thoughts than a meadow, but more understandable from head to toe. I sometimes wonder if someday it can be as complicated as me, and be able to think more freely. The thought of that scares me. Soon, it will move exactly when I move. It could be on my roof, or in my BMW coupe. My next piece is my ekphrastic writing. It's been a few months since I've eaten my first meal. I've been searching and searching, but I haven't found any luck. At this point, I'm better off dead. Can't you see that I'm a pile of bones? I have to say that this has been a really hard year. I have not found a mate, no meal to eat, nothing. The icy and snowy biome is as hard as any others. Hard like the rainforests of Brazil, hard like the dry and sandy deserts of Egypt, but I still keep my eyes on the prize. I'm still hopeful. But I feel that I might give in. Hope is being pulled from me as myself, as the cloudy days pass on and on. What's this I see? A seal on a block of ice. What is he doing just laying here? It's like a wagon of fish on a silver platter, waiting for me. He's defenseless, but he's also on the water. Damn, I need a plan to get over there. I know, I'll just dive underwater. Yeah, he'll never see me coming. I'm in the ice-cold water. It's freezing cold and very stinky, but I need this kill, otherwise I'm done. I'm by the ice block. Please God, just let me get this catch. Please give me the rest of my strength to bite the devil out of the seal. Please let me win. Here I come. My next and final piece is my humor poem, which is titled A Day at Six Flags. It's a hot and sticky summer day in mid-July. With nothing to do and boredom increasing, me and my family decided to go to Six Flags to go on some rides. We get in the car to go to this fun and magical place, where the rides are high and stretch really far, where people's mouths scream and hearts race. I try mentally preparing myself. I got nothing to worry about. I'm 14 years old. I can do this with no help. Boy, was I wrong. We go to the congested park. As I open the car door, my ears are filled with terror as I mentally soil my pants. I knew at that moment doom was impending. My brother decides to tag along. He drags me on a ride while slapping my back. This ride that we were taking to my death was about bats. It's a giant ride, packed with tons of people. It's so hot in there, I was melting like the glaciers. My own sweat could fill a lake with a ripple. It may be really high, still nothing I can't handle. And I was so sure, so secure. Boy, was I wrong. It's me and my brother's turn. A car picks us up and shoots us quickly into the air while being suspended. Meanwhile, I scream for my dear mommy while praying for Jesus. I shriek so high that I changed genders. We hit a drop and I squeal like the fire alarm beeps. Ah! Jesus, help me! We hit a loop. Oh crap, oof! I said as we went through the roof. The terrifying ride stops. Dizzy, I come out with a wobbling hop. I then turn to my brother and say, boy, was I wrong. That is all for today, and I hope you guys enjoy my ragdoll pieces. Thank you.
In the puppetry class, we examined video as a technique to help you make work on your own and in your own space. To build a puppet show all by yourself can be very daunting and very difficult, and it requires a lot of you. It requires you to be kind of a jack of all trades in many ways, because you're not only the puppeteer, but you're also building, making visual art, directing, performing, doing choreography and cinematography and lighting and writing, and there's also music. So it's a lot to juggle at once, and we touched on a lot of those different techniques, but started just with the basics of how to build a puppet. We started with character creation and design. We learned how to make joints. We learned about the kinetics of puppetry. We used found objects from our environments, just whatever was laying around the kitchen or in the recycle bin. We learned how to express those objects' thoughts and feelings through motion and through design, and really start to bring them to life. Puppets are actually, I think, very limited in what they can do. Unlike actors who can use speech or facial expressions to tell you what they're thinking and what they're feeling, puppets rely on a visual language to express themselves, and that puts a lot of pressure on our decisions as puppeteers, down to what the puppets are made out of, the kind of worlds that they live in, and how they interact with the world, and how they interact with the puppeteer, and what that relationship looks like. All of those decisions go into telling the story. From there, we examined the parts of storytelling through storyboarding. We learned first to show what the puppet sees, and then how it reacts to what it sees, and how to start to piece together these scenes to make a cohesive story. We learned how to make transitions between space and time. And that led us into the basics of cinematography, how to compose and set up a shot, scene progressions, really just how to make the most of the tiny sets, the tiny worlds that we built. I think in today's world, we've become very reliant on video as a tool. It's very accessible. It's right now our main way of communicating with each other. And I think a really powerful way to be able to make art and then show it to people.
Hi everyone, my name is Paulina Camacho Valencia. I am the instructor for the visual arts component. What you're going to see is a sampling of some projects, assignments, provocations that the students and I engaged in over our time together. And really the focus of our time this summer was really thinking about what is the role of an artist, what informs our work and our practice, and what is it that we pay attention to? How do we pay attention? What are we noticing? What do we maybe possibly neglect to notice or fail to notice? And how do we reorient our senses in order to be able to pick up, to see things that maybe aren't always as apparent to us? And how then do those things inform our practice? So we went through a series of Fluxus exercises. We would gather twice a day to talk about our experiences with these assignments, with these provocations, share our work, ask each other questions, and really try to cultivate a community of artists thinking and working together. Towards the end of our time together, students had an opportunity to create their own independent work in response to these conversations. It's an extension of our time together. So you'll have an opportunity to hear them speak about their experience and their work, as well as take a look at their artwork. Thank you for joining us, and thank you so much to Ragdale, to Regin, to all of the students. This was a really wonderful experience. Thanks.
I have 2 poems and a short story. The first poem is called 7 is Yellow. 7 is yellow, like a field of mustard gone to seed. It's a lopsided formation of geese, when 5 fly on the left and 2 on the right of their V. It's a group of friends in a narrative when there's more than 3, and a pirate's realm when he speaks of sailing the seas, and a butterscotch lolly on the lips of a honeybee, buzzing amongst the creatures God created during the days he determined how many colors would make a rainbow, and how many sins would be considered deadly, and on which days of the week his creations would rest, before they named so many wonders of the world and divided themselves amongst so many continents, and cursed each other so many years of bad luck should one break a mirror, even, and especially, if in anger that Snow White's heart was still humming besides bashful, and dock, and dopey, and grumpy, and sleepy, and sneezy, and happy. And the second poem I have is called Over Troubled Waters. I go to the bridge when the fog rolls in, and brain dead, nothing makes sense, be it letters or figures or grandma's 6 pence in Republican's defense. I listen to the drip, drip plop of the rainwater drop from the branches overhanging the river. I go to the bridge when the wasp's nest bursts, and tails between our legs we are stung, by flying words and pointing fingers, and praises to the devil sung leave innocence a dead man hung. I run my palms over the rusty iron arches of the support system spanning the marshes, where wild irises quake in the breeze. I leave the bridge when the train comes rumbling by, and nose level with the ground the wind buffets my back and the red flags are down since what's lost is found. I pick up my pen and the mess in the den where the harsh wind is absent once more. And lastly, I have a short story which is called Stairway to Cake. You jump over the threshold to Grandpa's house, assisted by a swing from Mama's arm on one side and Daddy's on the other, landed with an even thunk as both feet meet the newly polished hardwood floors. Daddy kisses Mama on the cheek as she gives him the big box you helped her wrap this morning, and then you're lifted up with big strong hands around your ribcage as Mama goes to talk with the ladies, and Daddy takes you over to Grandma, who puts down her glass and pinches your cheek and says, "Come here, you little rascal," and you're transferred to her heavy-skirted lap. She hugs you close as you spot the cake across the room, and you squirm out of her grasp as someone grabs her attention with something about the neighbor's wife's dog, and you waddle towards the kitchen, staring wide-eyed up at the gentlemen in suits and ladies in dresses that swish around their feet, and give you whiffs of pine and mud and new car and musty closet as they pass by. You spot a bundle of floating red and orange balls halfway to the kitchen, and you pause, noting how they sway and bobble and bounce back every time someone knocks one back with an elbow, and you decide they look like fun, so you run over clumsily and grabs hard on one of their strings, and a big red ball darts down and bops you on the nose, and your eyes grow big as you release the string and giggle, joined by the soft chuckles of a group of figures at the bar who are watching you over their shoulders. You spot several glasses on the counter and realize you're thirsty, so you climb up on one of them chairs and reach as high as you can, swiping at a glass with a long thin neck and a little green ball floating on top, until it flies over the counter and shatters on the floor, spilling smelly water that makes you cough. Oh, honey, Mama comes over and sweeps you up as another lady bends down with a rag and a dustpan, and another foreign hand reaches across and ruffles your hair, and deep voices mingle as you bury your head in Mama's chest and cry, sensing you did something wrong. But half an hour later, after looking back and forth from Mama to the ladies to Grandpa across the room by the stacks of bright boxes and balloons, as they drone on and laugh at things you don't understand, you spot the cake again and sneak away and climb up on the counter, and mouth water and eyes big, you trip on a plate and land face down in creamy, sticky, sweet frosted heaven.
Hi, I'm Lakshmi, and I am a student of Q in the Section 2 writing program at Ragdale. Today I'm going to be sharing with you an ekphrastic piece titled Morning Rain after Rene Magritte's oil painting Golconda. The bustle of people down to the train station consumed the air of the rainy April morning. Heavy storm clouds hung in the sky. Silent in the moment, but the coming storms daunted the pedestrians. The usual blue paint of the sky had drained from view, leaving a blank gray painting the city. The red roofs of the identical townhouses looked bright and lively against the drab world around them, despite their lack of originality. People crowded the streets, many wearing long black coats that would become slick with rain as the morning continued. All in a rush to meet a deadline or catch the earliest train, hands were shoved into pockets as eyes only followed the ground beneath. Small talk was avoided, maybe out of fear of distraction, but it made for these early mornings in the city to remain cold and quiet. Many of the workers fashioned round-top hats that matched their coats. They appeared faded and tattered from the daily use during the work week. The similar white curtains that guarded the many windows of the surrounding townhouses remained shut, each refusing to welcome in the morning. Only a few hours earlier did the almost identically dressed city-goers emerge from the stark red doors of these houses and join the bustle towards the workday. The door was quickly shut behind each individual, as their minds drifted away from the comforts of home. Nothing made this day special. In fact, the picture of these moments had remained the same for many weeks. Rainy days, drab mornings, and the lack of hope in ever seeing the sun. The same black coats and hats, the same stale tasting coffee from the surrounding coffee cars throughout the city, and the same train routes that transported the many blank-faced city-goers. Maybe the dreams had faded, or the drawl of daily life had made it harder to see the possibilities of each day, but the city-goers remained content with the almost identical mornings they each shared. The idea of the wealth they could earn if they worked hard enough remained a distant thought, as they instead simply focused on the current morning. The morning seemed to be making its way along quite nicely. The bustle of people had become a bit quieter as the crowd slimmed, only to grow louder when the city-goers emerged yet again for the same commute home. The clouds began to rumble, signaling the possibility for a hard downpour. The city-goers continued, not looking towards the sky, eyes still focused on the ground beneath. The rumbles grew louder and closer together, yet still no response from the people below. The clouds let out a roar of warning, and began to deliver the expected precipitation. Reflective pearls of water did not fall. Nothing began to hit the ground with a repeated pitter-patter. Pools of water did not form on the ancient cobblestone that paved the roads. One by one, individuals, almost identically dressed in long black coats and round-top hats, emerged from the depths of the clouds. Almost silently, motionless, they found spots in the air where they floated. A few feet remained between each one. They fell from the cloud until the air was full, and you could see the identical coats as far as you could look. The city-goers, once determined to rush to work, stood still, eyes wide and mouths posed in confusion as they observed the storm. They quietly watched the faces of the people in the air, who seemed calm yet present. The storm had stopped the daily buzz of the morning, each set of eyes fixed on the odd occurrence. As quickly as the rain people had appeared, a roll of thunder filled the sky. Lightning cracked after, gracing the ground with a long electric lightning bolt. The sky was lit up for a short second. Despite the racket, the fixed stares had remained, although only temporarily diverted by the bolt. As each person rubbed their eyes in disbelief, the sky was clear. Not a cloud to be seen. Not a person in the sky. The daunting storm was gone. The morning was drawing on as usual. The city-goers shoved their hands back in their pockets, quickly fixed their eyes on the ground beneath, and went about their way. No words were exchanged, no shouts of fear, just the quiet hum of the subway beneath.
Three is a magic number, not just 'cause of Schoolhouse Rock. Okay, mainly 'cause of Schoolhouse Rock, but triangles, 3 a.m. challenges, it's my favorite number because of that song. But good comes in threes, or maybe it's an American thing because of baseball. Oh, the World Series is a lie. It's not like the World Cup. People play baseball in the Asian and Latin American countries too, but we're like, nah, that's not World Series. This is World Series. Anyways, I don't like baseball. People around me like baseball. I like the number 3, my favorite number, and not just because of trios and triangles, maybe because of the rule of thirds. I like looking at things that have 2 things on the sides and 1 in the middle. And if we are talking, if we are speaking magically, 3 is not considered magic at all. 5 is, like a 5-pointed star. Human and elements, head, 2 arms, 2 legs, earth, wind, fire, air, and soul. And numerology, for biblical or spiritual content, if we're talking Christian or Eurocentric wise, it goes 5 human, 6 demon, 7 holy. So a human could possibly reach the best plane of like magic ability at like 5, but I'm sticking with 3. I also love 3 ever since that song. It's a good animation. Have you ever heard the song? The past, the present, the future. It's 3. Have you heard the song? 3s are easy. I remember I was talking about a lot about how much I like the number 3, and then I was signed my CPS email. My teachers were like, "It's 3!" And I was like, 3? That's my flabbergasted. That's my favorite number. It's common talk for 3 chances or whatnot conducts, but I have an infatuation that is motivated by a riveting beat of this kick-ass song I heard when small. But triangles and a symmetric eye-pleasing photo is very desirable too.
Hi, I'm Mia Wickman, and I'm going to be reading 2 of my pieces, the first being a poem called Love Blooms. Vines grow from black coffee in time spent with my dearest friend. They explore, burrow, split through my skin, and ascend. Tender sprouts scale my veins, my tendons, reaching for the sun, desperately depending. Vibrant greens branch from my heart, filling my arms with warmth. I can't help but feel fulfilled, sincerely joyful as they grow forth. I'm easily overcome by emotions, so much so it leaks out my pores, but I loathe the air nipping at my exposed nose. It painfully endures, so I can obediently crawl back to the warmth that seeps in every inch. A reminder for when their love scares me, not to flinch. I felt it the day I sat beside him, silently admiring his face, his jaw, and unruly stubble. I was perspiring as he watched the singing metallic bodies glide across a crowded gymnasium. Our team won, but my heart was so overwhelmed I was a puddle of casium. He wistfully smiled at my wacky nervousness, adoring still in his eyes. I ran into the chilled February with it blooming in my chest, ending our highs. Vines have tickled my lungs as a roly toddler giggles my name. When friends climbed atop each other, and briefly I found people who were the same. When the simple song came through the phone speakers while we stared up at far-off fires, or when the cacophony of choir voices, so beautiful my heart would swell, ended and became a room of criers. Thanks. Now I'm going to read a piece called Reasons to Go or Not to Go to the Reunion. I'd get to show off my brand new Aston Martin, brag about my most recent trip to Bora Bora. I'd get to walk past the room where I first became interested in policy and law, to show up with Lauren and prove the people who gossiped at the 25th year reunion that we'd be divorced by the next wrong. I'd show the guys who bullied me in high school, who now work at gas stations, how successful I am. But I'd have to deal with the guys who bullied me and make conversation, ignoring the elephant in the room. I'd get to brag about the twins going to Ivy Leagues, but I'd have to think about how one of said twins is cracking under the pressure I accidentally mounted and is growing increasingly dependent on Adderall. I'd get to talk about my famous successful friends and the adventures we've gone on, but I'd have to tell people I used to consider friends how my life has been without them in it, when they were the ones who left in the first place. I'd have to answer questions about how Ma's doing. I'd have to deal with Sheila, a doctor at the nursing home, staring at me. I'd have to deal with Sheila when she asked me how I was coping. and I wouldn't be home when the phone rings revealing if I have Alzheimer's. Thank you very much.
Hello. My name is Molly Moscato, and I was a part of Q's creative writing class, session 2. And so this is my piece titled The Home Front. According to Lisa's watch, which had been deemed far too masculine by far too many people, they should have started digging into the cake by now. This was frustrating for a variety of reasons, one of the most notable being that Lisa had fought with great vigor for the dessert of the evening to be the sloppily iced red velvet cake that sat near the fridge, slowly growing stale. She had argued with Deborah at the grocery store over its inclusion for at least 6 aisles, repeatedly shoving the ingredients she thought were necessary to bake such a delicacy into their basket, vainly hoping that her sister would grow tired of taking them out again. "It's not a party, Lisa," Deborah had sighed, hands on her hips, employing the same glare she reserved for the temper tantrums of her unruly children. "It's not a wake either," Lisa had countered. Eventually, after another show of sighs, Deborah had relented, placing a packet of cocoa powder back into the basket. The plan had been to serve the cake after the casserole, but the plan hadn't included Uncle David and her cousin Mark getting into a screaming match over the President's recent State of the Union address, or her mother bursting into tears in the middle of the fight, retreating to her room with Deborah right on her heels. Everyone else had slowly trickled out of the room after that, leaving Lisa and Will with an empty room full of dirty dishes. They worked in a silence that felt like snow, draping itself across every chair and coating the floor so that every step seemed infinitely heavier than the last. Occasionally, as she was scraping pieces of dried-off pasta off her mother's plates, or waiting for the water from the sink faucet to turn hot, words she wanted to say, words she thought she should say, would fall from her brain to the tip of her tongue. But every time she opened her mouth, it felt as though something was crawling up her throat, trying to choke her from the inside out. So she wiped away the few tears that had pooled in the corners of her eyes and wrapped herself in the blizzard of silence. In the quiet, she rummaged through the bottom cabinets in search of a sponge. Bending down in front of the last cherry cabinet in the kitchen, she yanked the cool metal handle of the door back swiftly. She pushed the various mugs aside carelessly, offering up a quick prayer of thanks to whichever saint Father Price could never stop rambling on about that the cookie tin she knocked over wasn't ceramic. When she realized, however, that the sponge wasn't in any of the drawers, she let out a string of curses on par with those of the sailors at Boston Harbor. "Don't let Ma hear you talking like that. She'll have a stroke," Will said, his head bent over the sink, trying to stifle his laughter. "You'd say the same thing if you spent half the amount of time I have searching this miserable kitchen for a sponge," Lisa replied, checking under a pile of dish rags. "You mean this sponge?" He quirked his eyebrows mischievously, holding the sponge in the air as though it were made of gold. "You little—" Lisa started trying to maintain an air of indignance, but it was no use. It was very hard to be in a room with Will's smile without smiling back. She rushed towards him, vainly attempting to reach the sponge, just for him to pivot out of the way. "Why didn't you tell me you had it this whole time?" "You didn't ask," Will said playfully, holding the sponge out of reach for just a moment longer before tossing it to her. "Honestly, Lisa, what are you going to do without me?" "I'll be so distraught I'll end up writing ballads of your heroic exploits and crying myself to sleep every night." She tried to keep her tone jovial, and her grin plastered to her face, but she couldn't help but wonder if Will knew her words were only half a lie. "Mark my words, you will be," he called out as Lisa stepped backwards towards the dining room. It was as if she thought that the distance could mask her sorrow, a sorrow that she knew would trample on the last few moments of levity they could squeeze out of the night. In her hurry to retreat, she didn't even register at first that she had knocked Will's messenger bag off the half-moon table. When she did realize what she had done and moved to put things back to rights, it wasn't the great striking green color of the bag that caught her attention, but rather the top sheet and the jumble of pages that had spilled from the satchel. As her fingers brushed across phrases such as important notice and report to, she had the uncontrollable urge to run into the kitchen and throw open every drawer until she found the lighter. She watched the paper go up in flames, she told herself, allowing the fire to warm her fingers before she tossed the ashes into the garbage. Then she would grab the keys to the family station wagon from their hook by the front door and tell Will to hightail it to Canada while he still had the chance. "You all right?" Will asked as he dried a glass cup. "You never miss a chance to make fun of Uncle David's politics." "Oh, yeah, I'm fine," Lisa said, her voice thick, his voice cutting through her daydream like a pair of dull scissors. I was just trying to figure out how Ronnie managed to make his mashed potatoes into a replica of the Taj Mahal. It was a lazy lie, she knew that, and yet a part of her was still shocked when Will came loping into the room, a dish towel slung over his shoulder. He caught her in the middle of dumping discarded asparagus into the trash can they had moved on top of their mother's prized cross-stitched tablecloth. For a brief moment she thought she was safe, but then his eyes caught on the mess of papers that still lay strewn across the floor. He glanced at her with an unreadable expression. At first it seemed like he was going to say something comforting about going over there, about leaving. He had the same somber look that the characters in Deborah's soap operas always wore before they espoused guidance upon their grief-stricken loved ones. But then he just picked up the plate that had been in her place setting, running his thumb back and forth across the huge chip in the side. "Do you remember how this got there?" Will asked, his frown quickly fading into a half-smile. "How could I forget?" She couldn't have been more than 10 on that fateful day. As they walked home from the bus stop, Will wouldn't stop rattling on about the knights he had read about in a book from the school library. They battled dragons and even evil kings, and they never even flinched, he had told her, his eyes filled with excitement. It had taken a while to wear her down, but eventually Lisa had agreed to play knight with Will, if only because she was looking for an excuse to delay her math homework. Their mother had been out on that day, and Deborah had been busy painting her nails, so there had been no wise soul to advise them against snatching their mother's finest plates to serve as shields. Lisa had flung herself into the joust with a kind of rambunctious energy that her mother often insisted would be her undoing. Brandishing brooms like swords, the two had run circles around the living room, the pounding tones of the classical music someone had left on sharply interrupted by the shrieks of their laughter. Eventually Will had backed Lisa into a corner, and in a last-ditch effort she had ducked underneath him and ran for the doorframe of the kitchen. In the rush of adrenaline that accompanied her small victory, Lisa didn't realize that there was a crack in the porcelain plate she clutched firmly in her free hand until she saw the horror on Will's face. When she had finally come home from her church meeting, their mother had stared in shock at the various petals now missing from the field of carnations painted on the plate. Towering over the two of them with the same deathly glare that Deborah would eventually inherit, she demanded that they tell her the truth of what happened. Will confessed immediately. Only he had lied and said it was he who chipped the plate on the doorframe. For his crime, their mother decided that he would spend the weekend with Aunt Marcia while the rest of the family went into the city to see the Christmas lights. The thought that Will wouldn't be able to enjoy the steaming hot chocolate and candied pecans at the pier aided her all week. That Saturday, before she laced up her snow boots, Lisa had tiptoed into his room and offered to turn herself in. Will had motioned for her to take a seat on the bed. When she did, he had turned to face her with a serious expression on his face. "A knight is sworn to protect. This," he insisted, gesturing at Aunt Marcia's car through the window, "is the chivalrous thing to do." That was the way Will had always been. He never ran toward or away from anything. That was why she never tried to change his mind the way everyone else had, why she never actually picked up the lighter or handed him the car keys. Still, she longed for the days when the only weapons they knew were fashioned out of cleaning supplies and repurposed cereal boxes. She was dimly aware that she was responsible for the wire stains peppered across the tablecloth, and she silently cursed as she wiped her eyes with a loose napkin, whose pungent garlic aroma only caused her eyes to water more. "I'm sorry about all this," she murmured, not meeting his eyes. "I told myself I wasn't going to do this tonight, 'cause Lord knows you—" "No, don't apologize," he replied, and when she caught his eyes, she saw that they too were watery. There was some comfort in that for some reason, that she hadn't been the only one unable to maintain the facade of joy. I wanted you to know that—" Lisa paused in the middle of pouring the remnants left in a soup bowl into the bag. Her mind flooded with the hundreds of ways to finish that sentence, and she desperately tried to find the best one, the one that would be able to survive the trip across the thousands of miles that would soon separate them. "I know," he said in a way that left no room for doubt or regret. He looked around the room as if it contained the answers to all their unspoken questions before he spoke again. "I'll be okay. You will too." Then he moved slowly over to the radio in the corner, messing with the dial until the kind of music Aunt Marcia always frowned at came on. The kind of music that conquered every silence and made your feet feel light again. There was no way to know if his words were true, but for once she allowed herself to believe them. She allowed herself to throw rhythm and grace to the winds, and dance with him, without a care, their laughs blurring with their tears, in the hours they tried to stretch into a lifetime. Thank you so much.
The prompt for this second piece was to write about somewhere we felt safe. And so, although mine is a bit unconventional, I'm very happy with how it turned out. The world rushes away from me. but I'm not scared. I'm hanging upside down now, but I'm still not scared. Through twists and through loops, I scream all the way. My insides churn, my organs jostled, but no panic sets in. My sister squeezes her eyes next to me, tells herself to take deep breaths, but I keep my eyes open, my breath stolen by the beauty of a world below us. Lights, shining and colorful and now blurring together, worth the interminable wait. My heart pumps fast and my blood feels warm, but as we return to the average altitude, a stupid grin is on my face. Because while some people looked like they had just been slapped, I actually had been. Silly. And if I could survive that, sitting in a tin can and a metal bar was the only thing holding me back from death, then I guess I could survive high school.
Hi, I'm Lakshmi, and I'm a student of Q in the Section 2 writing program at Ragdale. This is a piece titled The Utmost Beauty after Gwendolyn Brooks' poem, A Song in the Front Yard. The bark is thick, hard to break or destroy. They coat branches strong enough to hold me up and a wide trunk decorated with a hollow. The thin branches mirror arms outstretched and reaching towards my bedroom window. They inch closer as the days pass, quietly looming until time fades. Long and thin, many lay shadows over the grass cut every few weeks. The hibiscus were picked to pop in the indigo pots. I pulled together the rest of the flowers. The flowers fade with the change of season, like the hopes and expectations that remain unspoken. The fresh mulch drowns out the process of change and growth, dampening the tears of guilt. The garden is perky in many months, simply revived depending on the time. The array of petals frame the house, that sits still like a calm lake, the outside completely unsure of the world within. How can I understand the world when I can't understand myself? Manifest my mind in a garden of plant beauty, where the flowers are expected to flourish and remain part of an underlying plan for the utmost success of this lush space. The vast prairie of natural harmony sits no farther from the place where I question my hopes and ideals for life. In a world of broken perfection, we are surrounded by seemingly effortless nature. Some areas remain uncontrolled, seeming to be vivacious yet calm. I stay in the groomed awe of the garden, cluelessly waiting for my life to reflect the same pattern of control and simplicity. My plan isn't clear. My contribution to this world is not outlined. When do the progressing stages begin and the disappointment fade? I can see that I have this front yard, or this place I have somehow stayed for so long. I know no other place, and I am still struggling to change my way. The guilt visits when the days fade into the past, and it is unclear if I have wandered any closer towards the blurry visions I hope to achieve. Like the perennials that appear each after the next, past words loom in my mind in times of stress. Old but still present, they talk of expected success and the avoidance of negativity. I hope that one day I can reside in a spot of perfect chaos. Despite the lack of planning for utmost beauty, I will instead spend time in a life of my choosing. Away from the groomed abyss of the front yard I have known, I hope to find peace.
This is Creative Writing 2 with Q. This is our art aristocratic, I don't know how to say it, but we're going to describe an art piece and in a poetry form. Dark embers cascade to white that smears each strand of her geometry. The shape soothed like an eel, its tail clouding into a spike. It looks behind her body, dead in color but alive in movement, like a cape or a cloak that is adorned on her head. Her hair moves with the flat wind, but her face is complete symmetry. Her eyes hypnotic, vivid, that dance into the soul. Something that falls into her complexion beats pink hues while she drips dark cross tears. Her eyelash drip with them. The triangle nose pokes out, the lavender lips dip in the neck go. Her neck and shoulders secrete oozing lilac that coat the body. In her left hand the crystal hangs from her palm. The gleaming carries that spear behind her, the cycle's more pastel spikes that break with the beads that give the sky that ombre night and day. Out of her body blooms a lotus myxinea. Out sprouts another cross. Beneath the pillowed purple resides eyes that gives way for another cross, and it pinched out, gifted to me by my sister for Christmas. She hadn't visited as much, and I missed her, even though with her bright lights at night and the too loud music or whatever. Physical pains, especially when I tried to read or study, so I was given a picture to fill the empty human space, and more papers being entrancing my wall, enchanted colors glued to the walls to replace the text I do not get or questions, another Heather's Bioshock or an Alice Snow print. The dollar store constellations were never hung, and those two given to me by her girlfriend who has good taste too. On the second move there is no more pictures up. They put in a color that hurt my eyes, but I desired the pink palace and would draw the prints that I still admire.
Hi everyone, I'm Mary Grace King. I am 15 years old. I'm going to be a sophomore at Lake Forest High School this school year. Which is going to be crazy considering the fact that I'm not over, that I graduated 8th grade. Over the summer I did a 3-week writing intensive with Ragdale through Zoom because coronavirus, yay. And I had the pleasure with working with Margaret Hawkins for the second time last summer. I did it in person when this wasn't something we had to worry about. I'd really recommend the program to any artist, writer. I can't speak for the other groups because I can't do anything but write. If I would draw, it'd be embarrassing for everyone. It was just so wonderful having like-minded people to work with you and take inspiration from and just learn from each other through critiquing, and it's just a wonderful experience. I never really stopped thinking about it during the school year, and I was so excited that we were doing it again this summer because I feel like it just really helps me grow in confidence in my writing and improve slowly but steadily. I use too many words. Let's get into the poem. I've written a 3-part poem based around a couple of different prompts that Margaret gave us over the 3-week period. And I'll just get into it. It's called Secrecy, Hubris, and Tragedy. And you can really interpret it any way that you like, but it was kind of based around my high school experience, but very loosely. I take a lot of inspiration from classical literature, so there are a couple allusions in here. I don't want to sound pretentious, but you can just look them up, they'll make sense. Secrecy. Bones in the closet, a lock on the diary, a hole cut under the mattress, letters carefully folded and crammed in, a hand tracing the old yearbook, the smell of calendarized paper. She cannot seem to let them all go, and so she flips the page. The ashes fall on the roof over her bedroom, secreting from the clouds frozen in time above, as the clock strikes 12 for the 3rd time that night. Caged and suffocating, on her the halls are closing in, so small and delicate, and never quite in the moment. Hubris? She's been far too scared for far too long. Now October's resplendence is creeping, and she does not need to cower anymore. Stride through the halls, the hubris of Ulysses slipping off her shoulders, while they stare, the pride before the fall. The glass barricade she has built is going to come crashing down. She will look out over Elysian fields and not worry about the shards in her skin. Burnham Wood will march towards Dunsinane, but she is already long gone, and her wings are melting, but perhaps that was her plan all along. Finally, tragedy. Oh, so preventable from the outside, but we never see it coming. Stabbing through the curtain, killing the man on the road to Thebes, putting on Achilles' armor, flying too close to the sun, living life in dactylic hexameter with a rhyme scheme that changes for special effect. No life without death, no light without dark. Talia would not have her comedy if it were not for the tragedy of Melpomene. Dramatic irony is much preferred when analyzing Homer in English class, in comparison to real life. Where's the omniscient chorus when you need it? A day will come when she will not have to be alone. Being numb in the bathroom at homecoming is much more exciting than being numb in the confines of her room. She is far, far too boring to be excitingly tragic. A nonsensical string of words in a beaten down and faded notebook, sitting in the darkest corner of the world. That was it. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a wonderful quarantine. Bye.
This is a piece inspired by this year's Ragdale Ring installment, and it is titled Swirls. Some days are brighter than others. Words may be received more clearly, and time is taken to understand, but not always. The days swirl by in circles, making it hard to mark important moments in our relationship. There are days we fight endlessly, each clearly refusing to apologize or explain the anger. Other days we get along in a polite manner that just seems to work, despite its desperate avoidance of the real issues at hand. They are my family, given to me, something I cannot change. I must deal with the days of annoyance in order to bloom the moments of happiness. Time will fade, and I will move out because that is the path I remain on, swirling in circles of nerves and stress over the years to come, as well as the expectations to come. I am not the first to leave, and I will not be the last. But as the distance between each of us grow the moment I close the door, start the ignition, and finally leave, the moment that my years of youth begin to fade from view and I begin to swirl in new directions and worry about new problems, why must the emotional distance only grow? I used to love it, but the passion that kept me going for so many days on end, the swirls of creativity and excitement outshined those of expectations and self-deprecation for a while. That excitement dulled from view. I could only allow myself to submerge in this creativity when it felt right, never forced. What I loved and what I had tried to keep in my view has never been seen as profitable. There have always been safer options to compare it to. It has crossed my mind to simply forget this love and achieve something successful in the eyes of others. My relationship with this passion, the swirl of paint, the limitless ability of markers, is one of the most complicated. I hope to stay connected with these connections, even though they scare me the most. How can I plunge myself into the real world with this uncertainty? Could I ignore the most important people in my life because of it? Put forth money, hope, and dedication only to be unhappy with the end result and long for a do-over? I can never know if I said the right thing, or if the words were perfectly cohesive. I can only know that it feels okay in the moment. As I swirl through life, making connections and breaking them if they hurt, I must go on to understand the inevitable uncertainty. I can go back into things I love and run away from those that hurt and distract me, but if I do, I will never be in a straight line. Life isn't simple or a standard start to finish. Relationships in themselves are a winding road of confusion. The idea that our lives are made up of different steps that will slowly fulfill each and every one of us is a tale that cannot be true for every soul. In my life, I hope to discover and maintain my love of words and my ability to express myself with a variety of mediums. I wish to meet people that are open to understanding those connections. I hope that things will begin to make more sense someday. As I fly above the map of my journey, I hope to discover a beautiful mess that only I can decode.
This is the poem that they were like, you gotta go do it. And I was like, okay, fine. And I have no idea what the name is, so it's just the poem you gotta go do. In a mossy incline, moments I'm best in brief. I am relieved in a mist as a creature in shadow. My mind holds light, but burns under the hot rays. In the forest I saw myself, a nymph calling out, and when you are gone, who will remember you when you can't remember yourself? And when I strike her with my arrow, she catches, and I lower my bow with a laugh. But I do know. I know. We know. I'm alive. We're alive. May our values live into us. Leaves blow in the trees like the ground beats as a grin with sharp teeth. Like this in all things, first. And as we know, my life is a series of fast strikes, like being in a car and seeing lights flash across my face, and fumbles the car of my brain works in fragments that result in speed since some cells were poisoned. I may forget some and have it come back, but I'm still me, and I'm incredibly capable of doing, even if momentarily. And she danced with the arrow in an immodest nod, a warrior stance, made for the trees as those that live in it have the skill of easily fitting among the breaks. When all is said is done, The further of your creation gives way to your destruction. When you push it all out, what else may you have left? It stayed with me. The skills I learned stay with me. My values change when one is lost. What is left? A silence with myself of a question we both can't answer. But she is at peace while I'm a refugee. And she hands me the arrow. Fading back to sea foam, I'm aware, I'm unaware. It's a dripping purgatory of in-between. The water floods back in and out. Not lost anymore, but misplaced, and the feeling is more confusing. And if you cannot see something, you do not see it. But if you have to make the shape in a dim light, it is more work. And more work isn't bad, but it's more or less time being in the land and more time being in the in-between. Okay.
Hello, my name is Anne-Marie Christensen. I took part of writing session 2 with Quraish Ali Lansana, curated by the wonderful Ragdale Foundation virtually this year. And today I'm going to be presenting 3 pieces for you all. One called The Sound of Silence, a poem written in response to The Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel. A love poem called My Person, and a poem in response to the imagery presented by the video of the newest Ragdale Ring installation. So, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy. First, the Ring poem. She swirled with uninhibited grace, a freedom-singing smile on a glowing face. The little machine chirped as it laid down lines, its body wiggling with every bump, almost in rhythmic time. The wind caressed her face as the grass tickled her feet, as she leapt and curled, letting human and earth meet. The metal clicked and whirled, painting lines only known by its creators, bringing new life to old craters. Together they create new art, places where people come together and push the walls of their mind apart, seeing the stancer in her little painting machine cart. Next is my poem in response to The Sound of Silence. I see the darkness come again. It seems to want to make amends. Sorry for the pain it left seeping, followed by endless weeping. And the ache that almost left me insane always reigns within the sound of silence. Through the pain I was dethroned, but darkness seeks to atone. Hollowed eyes now forever damp, I wait cautiously for them to decamp. When a sudden battle cry echoed from their acolytes, brought forth new fright, and touched the sound of silence. And it ripped, leaving old wounds raw, pulling forth a tortured roar. Swords were drawn, clashes igniting, old battle lines began thickening. Darkness fought without a care, leaving me with only prayer to disturb the sound of silence. And I fought them blow for blow, refusing to ever fall below. So I pushed away what I thought I knew, and met head-on this final coup. My swords rang out strong like church bells, and echoed within the wells of silence. The longer I fought with my blade, the darkness and pain began to fade. With them no longer swarming, I could feel myself transforming. Finally, both I could shed. Though many scars remain, my story is forever scrawled, ready to be recalled and relished in the sounds of silence. I enjoyed writing that one. It was difficult in a really good way. And finally, I have my piece called My Person. I have a friend named Roxanne. She's very pale and can never get a tan. We laugh at each other regularly, her cackle like that of a madman, and we binge Grey's Anatomy under her hand-knit Afghans, but oddly enough, she doesn't like Batman. I met her one chilly winter's day, when the sun would hide like it does the night Santa goes for a ride on his sleigh. She wore her knit and leather jacket, with her treasured mustard hoodie on display. So I plopped down next to her, that busy midday, and we started making fun of the president's toupee. From then on, she's been my agape, my best friend, the one that can make me lose control of my airway. And she also tolerates my love of musicals, especially soundtracks from Broadway. And I support her anthropologically endeavoring way. And we both find songs for my dog, who has a love for reggae. I wouldn't trade her for the world. Hades can wait to take her to the underworld. Because she's the one that fixes when my fists are furled, the one I watched in her little black dress on the dance floor as she whirled, and held my hair back when I hurled. I admire her spirit, her strength, and her will, and the way that she can fight any battle you and I can, but uphill. And her mind is so full of so many enviable skills, but she shares them all with me, even when she has to tell me to sit still. And she pushes through until she's gotten her fill. As cheesy as it sounds, I can't see life without her or her presence. When I was in Costa Rica without my phone, I kept trying to find her the perfect present. Even when we're struck with rage assigned to adolescence, she makes me chuckle with this very specific sound that reminds me of a pheasant. And she tells me to watch Merlin with her so we can make fun of the village peasants. I sit here writing this on FaceTime with her while she showers, and I think of how she adores that shirt I got her with all the garden flowers, or how we can sit and talk for endless hours. All this makes me so grateful, especially to see her covered in various baking flowers, or if something upsets her, her various glowers. Because she's my agape, my best friend, my third sister, my favorite sister, and my person. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to witness the work that we all put in the past few weeks to bring these works forth for you guys to enjoy. And thank you guys for allowing us to have this space to create freely and openly every summer. And I hope you guys thoroughly enjoy the different pieces of work put forward by Margaret's group, the other writing group, the visual arts people, and everyone that attended Ragdale this year, even though it was virtual and a little bit crazy. And I can't wait to see what we all come up with this year and next year and in all the years to come. Thank you guys so much.